Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another time that we get to be together. I pray that this wisdom, this conversation would enlighten, help, and move somebody to take action in their life like never before. Show up, show out, and let's get to work. In your name we pray. Amen.
If I call you bro, that means I love you, bro. That means I'll go to war with you.
Fire, baby.
The reason why you need to know your identity is because when you know who you are, people don't get to define it for you. When I tell you guys who you have in your circle is important.
You're listening to the Bros to Men podcast with Cameron Persad, Jeff T. Osborne, and Roy Rand.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Bros to Men podcast, where we give you content that causes movement in your life. We want you to be able to move where you want to go. We want to give you content that incites action, that allows you to move your life to the next level, regardless of who you are, where you're from, where you live, how much money's in your bank account. It doesn't matter. We pray that during our time together, as we have this conversation, that you would get something that would spark a light bulb and move you in the direction of where you called to be. Yo, you know I got my brothers with me here in the studio. What's going on, fellas?
Man, feeling good.
Y'all feeling good?
Yeah.
Man.
Just had a Reese's, man. I got a sugar rush.
Yeah. And as always, we got our producer in the building.
Come on now. Talk to the people, Solomon.
Solomon, say what's up, big dog.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
Come on. Hey, well, look, I'm excited about this session. As always, I am with all of our conversations that we have. And part of the reason why this conversation hits is blinded. You guys are blinded. You don't even know what we're talking about right now.
I couldn't even get no hint, no clue, nothing.
I mean, it's got to deal with life. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, y'all don't get ready for this. I want this wisdom to be fresh. I want it to be off the top of the dome. And I want an organic conversation. So,
Drum roll, please.
The topic in the lab. Okay, hold on. I think.
Hey! What you got? Come on now.
Self-esteem. Today, we're going to be talking about self-esteem. If you don't have it, you need it. Do you have too much of it? What is it?
Delusional self-esteem?
Is there such thing as too much self-esteem? We're going to talk about self-esteem, and ultimately, we're going to talk about this idea of confidence that comes with this self-esteem. Yeah. I think it's imperative that we need it, but I want to start it off this time with reading the definition. You know I'm into linguistics. Y'all know language means everything to me.
Syntax.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just went on Google and I looked up what is the definition of self-esteem. And this is what it says. Self-esteem is how we value and perceive ourselves. It is based on our opinions and beliefs about ourselves, which can feel difficult to change. We might also think of this as self-confidence. Your self-esteem can affect whether you like and value yourself as a person.
Right up my alley.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to talk about it because they say and I didn't know this. When I looked it up, Weber State University had something, and they said that there are 3 types of self-esteem.
Okay.
This is interesting. The first one they said is overly high self-esteem. And this is a feeling superior to others. People with overly high self-esteem are often arrogant and self-indulgent and express feelings of entitlement. The second one is low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is when you feel inferior to others. And then we have healthy self-esteem, having an accurate and balanced self-view.
Okay.
So let's talk about this idea. We're going to dive into it. Yeah. I gave you guys like the foundation of this bad boy. Now we going to run with it. When you talk about self-esteem, there are people who are watching this who are like, man, I have zero self-esteem. Like zero self-esteem. So first I want to talk about the downside of it, right? How does not having any self-esteem, low to no self-esteem, how does that impact your life?
You don't try nothing. You don't try nothing. You don't step out. You don't walk into rooms and introduce yourself. You are caged in your own skin.
You don't put yourself out there.
You don't put yourself out there. And if you don't put yourself out there and get any feedback, nothing's going to get done.
And I think
how you feel about yourself shows up very vividly for other people as well.
Yeah.
Like without you having to open your mouth. Like I think the second you walk into a room, I think the way you ultimately feel about yourself and the amount of confidence and esteem that you have becomes very apparent for other folks as well. You know what I mean? Like when they say like, oh, your energy or your persona introduces yourself before you ever do.
Yep.
I think that holds true.
Really?
I do. I do. Because I think when you're timid, I think there's obviously a lack of confidence there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've all been around people who just weren't confident. They didn't have to tell us they weren't confident.
Yep.
Just the way they moved
Yep.
made that very, very apparent. But I think the opposite also holds true. I think when you are a confident person and that you have a certain level of self-esteem, I think that also shows up. And that's very attractive, I think.
You mean having self-esteem?
Yes. And I don't just mean like, oh, I find that attractive in women. I think just when you're confident,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all been around someone, even our younger selves, right? Like we were all around someone that was like, man, like if I can be like him in 5 years, or if I could just take a little bit out of his notebook, you know what I mean? Like it's an aura that I think is very alluring. And I think it inspires people who maybe are missing that.
So if you don't have any self-esteem, what do you guys think is a contributor to not having high self-esteem?
Self-talk.
That was part of the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Self-talk.
Yeah. Like self-talk in the sense of like, what are the things that you subconsciously tell yourself? You know, like when you walk into a room or say you get an invite somewhere, do you feel like, yes, I deserve to be here. I put the work in, right? Like this is my opportunity to go and network. This is my opportunity to go and talk about what I do, the things I'm passionate about. Or do you walk in with that like kind of shoulder shrug, kind of that slump look, like, what am I doing here? Like that story Tyler, the creator, told, right?
Yeah, hey, say it again because I love that story. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just he got invited to this party of celebrities, and he walks in, and he's like, he's starstruck. You know, he's walking around, and he's like, oh man, that's Denzel Washington, or oh man, that's Rihanna, da, 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 you know. And then Denzel noticed the body language, and had to come over, hey, you know, act like you belong here, chest out, chin up, you know, like you're one of us. You're a celebrity as well. So I think that's that self-talk. It's like if you believe that you have earned your seat in that room, your body language is going to say such.
Yeah.
It's wild you said self-talk, because my definition of confidence is an intimate conversation you have with yourself. So you're always confident, but you're confident in whatever that intimate conversation is with yourself, your self-talk.
Yeah.
And so where does that self-talk come from? That self-talk, people, and this is extremely important, it's not even from you. That self-talk was what people told you from ages 1 to 7.
Wow.
Studies have shown your hippocampus, which is the part memory comes from, doesn't even turn on till you're 18 months. So when you see DJ Khaled, like, you're a mogul, you're a boss, you're a don, that is so important for what you could do for your kids. But we all weren't raised that way. We all weren't fortunate to have parents to know that, right? And so you have to understand what your self-talk is, acknowledge it, and even acknowledge where it came from. And then maybe you can, and not maybe, you can rise above it and operate in a different way and raise your self-esteem.
I love that. I saw this quote one time. It said, "It's not what other people call you; it's what you respond to."
Ooh.
Think about that. Like, it's not what other people call you; it's what you choose to respond to. Right. So there's a component of acknowledgement in that. So you can call me whatever you want to call me, but none of it holds true until I respond to it, until I acknowledge what you've called me.
Wow.
Think about that.
Wow.
So it's like, what do you acknowledge about yourself, which also ties back to how do you view yourself? Because anything else, if you choose not to acknowledge it, then you choose not to allow it to be reality, right?
That's so huge, because I remember a time my first conference that I ever spoke at was a men's conference in Lafayette, Louisiana. Okay. And in this room was 1,100 men. First ever.
Right.
So I
That's
go
a hell
out
of a first
there,
conference, bro.
I'm 22 years old, going to a men's conference. And my boy Andre, shout out to you, Andre. I love you, bro. Andre, successful multimillionaire business guy. He's like, yo, what you doing in March? I said, I don't know. He's like, you coming with me speaking at a conference. I said, what? He's like, yeah, one of the speakers backed out and I told him they needed you. So I was like, dope. Like, I'm cool. Pops ended up coming. He was a speaker too. And so I go and I speak at this conference. And when I spoke at this conference, it was the craziest thing because I spoke and I remember, I don't even remember the moment. It was a blur. By the time I was done, there was a standing ovation in the room from these men. Like, and we down south. So these are like men's men. They're wearing camo and probably got like duck guts on the bottom of their boots because they just went.
Dynasty.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like these guys were like real like men down there in Louisiana. And I remember as soon as the event was done, I'll never forget this. I just got a standing ovation, and right there in the front row, there was a gentleman who didn't stand up and he just had his arms folded. And I remember when I got off of the stage, I was so discouraged that I walked out of the church and walked something like 5 miles or something like that in the Louisiana. Your family, you from, you know what I'm saying? Your family's in the Louisiana summer heat.
Muggy, humid.
Like just walking because I felt like a complete failure in that moment.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the crazy thing about it, is the moment that person did what he did, and I would be in these rooms with all these guns right afterwards, I envisioned myself as a little boy in tattered and ripped clothing with no shoes on anytime I got in a room with these guys. And here I was 22 years old, I'm a man, but I would feel like this cowering in my head because of how I viewed myself internally.
Yeah.
And
that was manifesting.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Like, and it began to manifest on how I would carry myself and that lack of confidence. And it wasn't until at that time I didn't know about something called a heart belief. And this is something that I coach in now because it almost robbed me. A heart belief simply states that it doesn't matter what anybody tells you. It doesn't matter how much giftings you have inside of you. You will never be able to elevate your life above the highest image that you hold of yourself here.
Yep.
I'm going to say that again for somebody watching. No matter how many Tony Robbins events you go to, how many coaches you pay, how many books you read, how you name it, whatever it is, nothing will ever change in your life until you change your heart belief of how you view yourself here. Because how you view yourself here will always be the cap, or it'll be the catapult for where you want to go in your life.
Man. Yep.
It's a heart belief. And so when we talk about self-confidence, that little boy in the tattered clothes was how I viewed myself when I was with people of greatness because I didn't believe I belonged in the room.
Yeah. That's so good. It actually reminds me of a story. I had this job and it was actually like, it was a pretty good position. I was actually leading one of like the largest teams I've ever led before. But what's interesting is that there was a gentleman who led another department. Like he wasn't even in my department. He led another department, been at this employer probably 15, 20 years longer than I have. So at this time, I'm probably early 30s and he's probably mid-late 50s, right? So in one of my very first meetings, he referred to me as the kid. And every time he started referring to me, he was like, yeah, I told the kid that, this is what we should do. And I'm thinking to myself, like, it's almost like being called boy, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
But he just did it in such a way where he was like, yeah, I mentioned that to the kid, or a good point, I told the kid, and that kind of thing. Like he would never refer to me as my title or my name. And then after a while, what I started realizing was I was telling myself, that's not that big of a deal. That's just, maybe how he is, or he's older, it's an age thing. But then what I started realizing was subconsciously I wasn't speaking up because it was almost like I was playing the role of being a kid. Everybody around me is older and like I'm speaking when I have permission to speak. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
And it's crazy because another gentleman who was around the same age pulled me to the side one day after a meeting. He was like, hey, speak up for yourself. That's all he said. He didn't mention about it being called a kid, but I knew what he was talking about, and he knew what he was speaking to. I was like, damn, okay.
Yeah.
So that was such a huge life lesson to me. Kind of like what I just mentioned. Like, it's about what you respond to, right?
Mhm.
So in much smaller environments, it'd have to be in front of 20 people, 30 people, like the board meetings, but I'll start speaking up for myself, and making him say my name or acknowledging, or he would say, yeah, I told the kid, I was like, well, I'm the head of such and such department, that type of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, big shot. Like, he's joking, okay, big shot, I got you, that kind of thing. But that's when I realized people will always try to downsize you to make you feel inferior, right?
Ooh, okay.
So it's almost like
Okay.
if you, here's a life lesson I've learned. If you let it slide once, you can't complain when it happens a second time.
Ooh, hello.
If you let it happen once, you
Hello.
cannot complain when it happens a second time, a third time, a fourth time. And I'm actually grateful for that now, because it ended up changing once I spoke up for myself. And it gives you a certain level of confidence too. Like, yeah, I stood up for myself and it feels good. Just because I'm the youngest in the room doesn't mean I have to be referred to as kid, right? Like, I've earned my seat here. I have the same degrees you hold. Actually, I have more degrees than you have, that type of thing.
Mhm.
But I think it's important because whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a professional environment, if it happens one time, you have to correct it and dead it in that moment.
Mhm.
Because once it happens the second time, you can't allow it to you can't complain the second time. It's almost like you've accepted the title at that point.
So in psychology, they call that autosuggestion, where
Mhm.
people are saying things about you or calling you things, and you just take it as a suggestion, and then you just automatically act based on what they're saying. And then there's another component called tacit agreement.
Mhm.
And tacit agreement is where you don't speak up, or you don't even tell yourself in your head, like, that's some BS, right?
Mhm.
If you don't give a actual word of going against that autosuggestion, then your subconscious mind will take it as true. And then
Wow.
you'll start acting in a way
Wow.
Right.
that is truthful towards what they said. And so I employ people to do what you said, is speak up right away. Don't ever give tacit agreement. If you hear something that you don't like, or that you don't want your subconscious mind to respond to, or something that doesn't pertain to you,
Mhm.
you don't have to be confrontational, even though I like to be. You can just say to yourself out loud, like, the kid,
Right.
get out of here, bro. I'm that dude.
Yeah.
But you have to say it to yourself with your internal voice, or you have to say it outwardly to that person, so that your subconscious doesn't just accept it as true because you gave it tacit
Yeah, and
agreement.
I think people associate silence with agreement.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is why you can't allow that to occur.
Tony Robbins, is big in NLP, neuro linguistic programming, right? And part of NLP is learning how your mind works, but also creating new neural pathways
Mm.
to create a different way of being or a different outcome that you have. And what I've heard is, and I haven't been to any of his events. I've watched his documentary and I've done things like that. But one of the things that I remember in one of his interviews that he says is, in the middle of somebody complaining or talking bad about themselves, he will say something so off the wall
break
to
the
that
pattern.
individual that it'll break the pattern. So they'll be talking, man, I've just always been looked down upon before. And he'll be like, when's the last time you had sex?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, what? Or he'll say something a little more vulgar, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But the thought immediately interrupts the pattern that has been been woven. It's almost like it's almost like when you think about horses, where you see cows, because where I live, there's a lot of,
Right.
there's a lot of cows there, and you'll see on the side of the hill these pathways that are just worn into this mountain. And it's because these cows take the same pathway every single time, that it's created a pathway that they take, and they know where they need to go to get to every single place. And what happens is if we don't break the patterns, we'll create a pathway of low self-esteem that we subconsciously just keep going to again and again. And we'll know that it will get us to the same destination every single time. Like, these cows know how to get to the same destination until you break that pattern. And one of the things I say that I used to do when I would have these negative thoughts and this low self-esteem would to come in, because I love what you guys said, is low self-esteem happens when there's a statement that was made that you either spoke over yourself, that somebody else spoke, you didn't interrupt it, you didn't interrogate that to see if it was true or not. You were quiet, so you were placid in that or in that agreement. And because of that, you've accepted that as your truth. There were moments where I would be speaking and on my journey of trying to become this person of or this caliber of person. And I remember these thoughts that said, man, look at your past. You're an ex-felon. You were in the gangs. You did all of these different things. What makes you think that you would do it? So what I would do is I would try to fight that battle internally in my mind and say nothing about it. But the more I didn't say anything, I was ruminating on that thought. So it was creating a neural pathway that kept that story in my forefront or kept it on rewind until Tony Robbins, when I saw that, he said, you got to interrupt it and don't even give it any way. The moment the thought would come into my head, I would go, no,
Yeah.
that ain't true.
You literally got to do that.
Like, I'm great at what I do. I got a purpose. I got a calling. No, I would start quoting scriptures for myself that would contradict what it is. Philippians 4:8 says, whatever's good, whatever's noble, whatever's lovely, whatever things are of good report, meditate on these things. And so anything that was contrary to the life that I wanted to live, contrary to who God said I was in my identity, I would yell it. And it was almost like people thought I had Tourette's.
Yeah.
I'd be in the line and I'd be sitting there thinking, I'd be like, nope,
Yep.
that ain't written.
Off
No,
me.
no, psych. Like, you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
And they looking at me like, come here, baby. Like, but I understood that I could not allow that thought to stay in my life because it was producing low self-esteem. It was producing a lower image of how I saw myself. And so this is where low self-esteem comes in, where you're talking more. Was it somebody? I learned this is sometimes we talk nicer to other people than we talk to ourselves.
Yep.
Like, if we talk to other people how we talk to ourselves, we either be knocked out, killed, or nobody would be in your life. So let me ask y'all this. I'll ask you, Cam. Why do you think it's acceptable for us to speak terrible about ourselves, but we won't talk that same way with other people?
Well, for one, it's not acceptable, right? But we make it this acceptable norm. And I think, two, it's the part that you just said where we know if we talk crazy to somebody else, they're going to take action, right? They're going to check you on it. And I think to check yourself, you have to be mindful of your thoughts. And I think a lot of times we're not mindful of the self-talk. And I think another thing that holds true is that just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. And I think a lot of times we think if we're having these thoughts of ourselves about, I'm not competent or I'm not capable of doing this thing that I want to do, and we're just beating ourselves up with the self-talk, we begin to think, if I'm thinking these thoughts, they must be true. But it takes a certain level of awareness and mindfulness to be able to tell yourself it's not true. Everything you think isn't fact. What do you think, Dave? Like, how do you get out of that pattern of negative self-talk?
When we get a suggestion, a word pattern in the form of a suggestion, if you don't outright say what you want to focus on, what your brain does is it looks for proof on what the suggestion was.
Oh, that's good, dog. That's good.
So there's a good story that KG talks about when he beat Big Baby in arm wrestling, and nobody thought that KG could beat him in arm wrestling. And I'm actually going to give away some of my mental, secrets here.
Hey, hold on. I'm just major key alert.
Major key alert.
Okay, here we go. Come on, talk about it.
There's always opposing forces in your mind, and you just got to feed the positive side, and you got to be really good at it. So Kevin Garnett was playing arm wrestling with Big Baby, who's like 50 pounds more than him.
Big Baby Davis.
Okay. Buffer, and you guys can YouTube this story. And I was watching the story, and Kevin they just held each other there, right? And what Kevin did was he grew the doubt in Big Baby's mind, which made him weaker. So what he did, and I do this a lot, is he gave a suggestion and then gave him a little bit of proof. He used a lot of energy and moved about a half an inch. And he looked at Big Baby and says, "Oh, that thing moving, big fella. Oh, that thing moving." And then that got in Big Baby's head. And even though Big Baby is probably stronger than him, KG was able to get in his head and give him a suggestion and some proof to get him to release that governor in his brain. And then he lost, right? And so I think just to go towards your question is, we have so many times in our past that proves why we're not worthy. Right? All the traumas, all the bad things that people said, all of the mishaps. And we didn't know how the brain worked, right? We didn't know that they were just auto suggestions. And we just took those experiences as truths instead of we took those experiences as life sentences instead of being like outright, out loud, in our heads, however you got to do it. That ain't me. That was just one mistake, or that thought ain't it. It is literally, and I gave a talk in the Philippines one time called "Winning the War for Your Mind." And these Swedish dudes were like, everything American, everything's a war to you guys. But that's really what it is. It's literally a war of suggestions, and you have to take all of those thoughts and you have to put them in an arc, and you have to control them. And you have to be the leader of your own suggestion and your own mind.
So we talk about, I love how you said that. I love how you talked about creating doubt or creating faith in those moments just by a little bit. We talked a lot about low self-esteem, self-talk, how you view yourself. And later on in this episode, you already know we're never going to leave you guys on a cliffhanger where we don't give you the tools to be able to do this. And so I want you to stay tuned, because you're going to get some of the answers on how you're going to build the self-esteem in your life so you can walk with confidence to get to where you want to go. But in that definition, also, that in 3 types of self-esteem, they talked about low self-esteem is having a low view of yourself, but then they have overly high self-esteem. And when they talk about overly high self-esteem, that's in the place where you start getting arrogant and cocky because you're thinking that you're superior than somebody else. Do you believe? This may open up a can right now, and I'm looking at you, Dips, because I feel like this may open up a can. But do you believe there's such thing as too much self-esteem, where you have an over self-esteem mentality to where you become arrogant and cocky and over can there be too much self-esteem?
1,000%. I think the sweet spot, because I think the sweet spot is where people believe you, but you're always going to have people who think you're delusional, right? And also, like we talked about, the time, right? Sometimes the delusion is me saying now that I'm the person I'm going to be in the future. Like, I'm putting in the work, right? And I have proof, you know what I'm saying? I remember one time I lied and told someone like, "Yo, I'm benching 315. Yeah, I repped that about at least 2 to 5 times." You know what I'm saying? Never done it. I had never done it in my life.
Yeah.
And what I did was, we made a bet, and it was coming up in about a week. So what I did was I went to the gym. I put 2 plates on there, and I imagined it was 215, and it was stuck on my chest, and I had to push through it, and I was pushing through the 225, like boom. And in my head, that 225 felt like 315. Then when we got to the 315, you know what your boy did? We pressed that thing 3 times.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's, people say, is it physical? Is it mental? I used to say it's 90% mental, 10% everything else. Now I know it's 100% nervous system.
What's that? Wait, what's that mean?
That's your brain. That's your central nervous system. That is, your body releases feelings and emotions and power based on what it believes it can do. And you just got to show it that it can do that without being hurt, right? And so that's what I did in that moment. And I was able to make what was at the moment a lie, a future truth. So I was delusional, but then I went to work and made it possible and then actually executed.
So is that something that you would say was overly confident, where you were cocky and arrogant in that moment? Or was that, I know you talked about a healthy balance, but if we're talking like, I think that's a great example of having a healthy balance, kind of adding in both of that good confidence. But what does it look like? Have y'all ever been around somebody who was overly confident and cocky and arrogant?
Yeah, I think there's a balance. I think there's no such thing as being like overconfident in your ability. I just think there can be overconfidence in like the time frame that you're physically able to do something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So because I think skills and strength take time to build. So if you say one day I'm going to achieve that level, does it mean that you're delusional for thinking that you can achieve it? No, but I think if you say I'm going to be there tomorrow, that could be delusional.
So that's overconfident.
Yeah.
That's
So,
you have too high of a self-esteem.
Because I had a foundation. It wasn't like I
Exactly.
never worked out.
right. So it's like in Dip's situation, he wasn't someone who had never lifted weights before and said, hey, tomorrow I'm walking to the gym and hit 315. And I've never even benched the 45s before. Right. So I don't think there's too much confidence in seeing yourself being able to achieve whatever it is at the task at hand. But I just think that maybe you can give yourself too short of a window to achieve those goals if the foundation isn't already in place.
I believe that you actually can be overconfident in your ability if how you're viewing yourself in that moment, you view yourself too high in that moment and you don't have the skill set in that moment to get there. I think that's an overconfidence of not just saying, hey, this is where I'm going to be one day, but there's a lot of us who walk around and say, I can take that job right now.
Right.
Like, give me, give me that. I heard it said, like, if you, one of these guys, he was a big leader, and I can't even forget what the podcast that I was listening to. He says, if I wanted to destroy you right now, I'd give you everything I have right now. If I wanted to destroy your life right now, I'd give you everything that I have right now. The 300 employees that I'd have, I'd give you that right now if I wanted to destroy you. The light that I have right now, the stage that I have right now, if I wanted to destroy you, I'd give it to you right now.
Because it's more than they can handle.
Because it's more than you can handle. And I think that being overconfident and being cocky, being arrogant, is to say that I can do what you can do better, but you didn't put the work in, you didn't put the time in, you didn't pay the price. We just had an episode about paying the price, paying the cost to be the boss. And so I think that when somebody has an overly high self-esteem, or you're cocky and you're arrogant, you feel like you're untouchable. You feel like nobody can compare to who you are. You look down on everybody else like you're superior in that situation, and you underestimate the weight that it takes for somebody to stand where they stand. So when you step into a room and you fall, I'm gonna say this. I gotta say this. People who come in with a proper estimation of the weight that it's taken, and you come in humble and meek, versus somebody who comes in overly confident and cocky, there's more grace for somebody who comes in meek when you make a mistake than somebody who's overly confident and cocky.
That's 100%.
Am I lying?
No.
Like, am I telling the truth?
What's crazy is when you go in those rooms and you're cocky, but the moment you start speaking on the subject, everyone who actually did the work knows right away that you don't know what you're talking about.
And if you don't believe us,
yes,
watch an episode of America's Got Talent or American Idol. Yeah. You seen them people that come on the stage, they all dressed out to the nines.
Right.
Like they got the shades on and they like, yo, who are you? I'm Big Raz B from the 989. Right. And they're like, oh, okay, what you gonna do? You already know what it is. I'm about to go ahead and blow your mind because I'm the best to ever do it. Right. And like they get out there and the music starts and
not an ounce of talent.
How many times?
What?
And we've all hooped. How many times have you been warming up for the game and you're looking at the other team and you see the dude who got the bounce, got the socks, the shoes?
Yeah, he got the latest kicks dunking on.
You like, yo, he nice, bro. I'm about to, he might get at me. He might be tough. Then when you go out to play, he don't even start.
Right.
Right. You know, he got the look.
Yeah.
But he can't perform in the game. And so I want to push back though.
Okay, give it to me.
Roger Bannister.
Okay.
Right? Run the mile under 4 minutes. Absolutely. They thought it was impossible to do.
Right.
He comes in swagging, I'm running a mile under 4 minutes.
Okay.
Didn't train anymore. All he did was train mentally. And they thought it was humanly impossible to
Right.
do it.
To break the 4 mile mark.
He walked in delusional, confident, and then he broke that mark. Now, here's what's crazy. After he broke the mark, after other people saw it was possible, 30 people did it within that year, and now high school kids do it. So what is the difference between his delusional for something that was considered to be impossible and then just the high, confident, arrogant delusionalness?
I think that it comes down to the definition of the word. When you talk about overly or highly confident, you look down on people. You're arrogant. You walk in and there's no humility in you whatsoever. And I talk about humility not as I think some people have false humility, right? Where somebody crushes it and you're like in my space that I've been at where I've seen it, whether it was at a conference or whether it was somewhere like that, you talk to someone like, yo, man, you killed that. Oh, nah, you know that was all God. Or you like, yo, man, you looking big. Oh, man, I'm just trying to be like you, G. Like, it's just like false humility that they hold and say, man, thank you. I put in a lot of work, so I appreciate you looking at me. But when you're overly cocky and arrogant, you're looking down on those people like, yo, y'all ain't even gonna touch me. You're trash. Right? Now, granted, there are some people who are like that. And I'm not even gonna hold you. I can't lie and say that there are some people who are like that, but some people are like that because they put the work in like that. And it just means you just an arrogant, SOB, and you just don't, you could back it up. But the people who are walking around overly confident, or you're cocky, you're arrogant, I feel like there's only a matter of time before you fall. And when you fall, your fall is great because people are looking for your demise. And when you fall, there's no grace for your fall because you presented yourself to be higher than anybody else.
I think you nailed it because Dr. David Buss talks about in derogation of competitors. He says you either derogate people or you just talk yourself up. And I think those...
Wait, hold on. What's derogate?
Derogate means like you hate on them. You say that they're trash, that you say that instead of you just saying I can do better, you say I am better. Which is a small distinction.
Ooh, hold on. I like that. So the difference between, if I'm hearing this right, the difference between confidence and arrogant. Confidence says I can do better. Arrogance says
I am better.
Boy, I've never heard. Hold on, let me get you something, dog.
That's a distinction right there.
That's it.
That's
fire, bro.
I love that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Arrogance is I am better. Confidence says
you believe you can do better.
I can do is you put in the work.
Oh,
I just believe that I can do because I put in the work. I am is like, I'm just better than you, bro.
Bro, you just broke the chains off of somebody watching this right now. Because I believe that sometimes people don't step into the fullness of who they are because they say that if I'm confident, that means that I am better. And so they stay at a low level thinking that if I'm humble and I play myself low, then, that means that I'm not going to get too big-headed and let it get to my brain. But if I'm confident, that means, no. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm better than who I used to be yesterday.
It's you versus you.
It's you versus you.
I love that.
Because we're all God's children. But God's law is you got to plant that seed and put in the work. So which one of his children are putting in the work?
So let's weigh in. So now we've talked about, so I love what you just said. Low self-esteem is where you talk bad. You said it's language, right? We talked about how it's you speaking bad about yourself. You're tearing yourself down. You're talking limitations. And we realize sometimes that comes from people who've placed that on you. That's come from experiences that you had. And that means that you did not interrogate what we call in coaching, what I call your current reality. You're not looking at the current reality of what they said. You're just taking whatever they say as truth because they were your mom, your dad, somebody you looked up to, but it doesn't mean it was real. So you have low self-talk when you have low self-esteem. You have a low heart image of yourself when you have low self-esteem. When you have high self-esteem or overly high self-esteem, you're cocky and you're arrogant. That means, well, let me say this. Low self-esteem means everybody's better than me and I'll never be good. When you have overly high self-esteem, you're saying I'm better than everybody else and nobody will be as good as me. Now let's talk about having that healthy balance, where they talk about having a healthy level of self-esteem.
I think
Weigh in on that.
I think it ties into just believing in the work. You know, like you just believe that, you know, I don't think I'm necessarily better than anyone. I don't think I have this God-given ability. I can just come out here and outperform everyone because without putting in the work. I think you just have this undenying belief that if I put the work in, I know I can compete. I'm gonna get a fair shake because I'm putting the work in to give myself, you know, an equal playing field. I can come out here and compete because of the work that I'm willing to put in. And I think that's all it is. Like, I think most of us operate in that space where it's like, yeah, they might be better at me right now, but let me go back and put the work in for 6 months and I'm going to turn some heads when I come back out here.
How many times have you guys got good at something from putting in the work, and then people assume that you're just God given?
Yep.
Like you could just, Jeff, you could just talk. Like you just have this natural ability to just talk, or people tell me all the time you just have those genetics. Those genetics to stay under 8%, you know, those black genetics, those athletic genetics.
I hate when people say that because they undermine the work.
Undermine the work.
Or it's like, Jeffrey, you just have this God-given ability to be a pastor. Like, no, I practice. Like, I've been in the mirror talking to nobody in the room for 10 years.
What was that Panera bread?
Right, you know?
Every day.
Yeah.
Coaching
like
myself before
like you say, you're doing gold mines in front of stuffed animals before anyone ever wanted to come in here you speak. Like, so I almost feel like it's a slap in the face. Like, no, don't undermine the work I've put in and the commitment I have to my craft.
My coach taught me this, and if you have a coach in your life and they don't have a coach, that's a dangerous thing. I just had to drop that. Like, every coach needs a coach. And one of my coaches, who I'm watching his life and watching what he does, he says something that I think is so brilliant. He says that confidence comes from competence.
Ooh.
Confidence comes from competence. A major part of self-esteem comes from when you've put the work in and you know that you've put the hours in, you know that you've did the dedication that's needed to become great. When you stand in front of that room or when that moment comes, you have confidence to know that you can deliver because you're competent enough to know what it is you're talking in. And I feel like sometimes imposter syndrome comes into our life because we are pretending to be somebody that we've not put the work in to become.
Jeff, why was David so confident that he could slay Goliath?
Because he said that when I was on the backside of the mountain tending to the sheep, when nobody saw me, I killed a lion and I killed a bear. And then he went on to say, the same God that delivered me from the lion and the bear when nobody saw is the same God that's going to deliver me from this uncircumcised Philistine. So let's get it.
Let's get it. What's up? Bro. And at the end of the day, we're gonna catch this fade and we're gonna see.
You know how I think you could tell like the difference and if you've really put the work in. So if you've put the work in, you walk around hoping for an opportunity.
Yeah.
Boy.
And when you haven't, you pray that opportunity never comes because you ain't ready.
Yeah.
Boy.
You know what I mean? Like when you've put the hours in, we know people, military that train firearms, CCW, you know, physical combat training. They walk around with the mentality, like, I wish somebody would.
Javon B.
Like, if that opportunity comes, I'm ready. Right? And you can tell people that haven't because they're like, I don't like physical confrontation and I just hope, you know, like anytime someone makes eye contact with me, I look away because I don't want that. I don't want that smoke. But people who put the work in, it's like, I pray to God somebody gives me the opportunity.
Give me all I need is an open. That's what we talked about.
All I need is the opportunity.
All I need is an open door. You give me a stage. You give me all I need is an opportunity, because where preparation and opportunity meet, that intersection is called growth.
Come on.
And exposure. That changes the game. When preparation and opportunity meet right there on that intersection, that's where purpose happens. That's where open doors happen. That's where God creates blessings that happen. And so I love that scripture that says, if you're faithful in the little bit, God will bless you in the much. And sometimes we're not confident in the level that we're at right now. So God can't bring you to that next level. You haven't built the competence to be where you are here. Some people, look, let me say this. Most people want to be married and have a relationship, but you ain't ready for a relationship because you can't even brush your teeth on a consistent basis. You talking about you want to take care of somebody else, but you can't even take care of yourself. And so until and it goes the same thing with your spiritual walk. God, give me a deeper revelation. I want to know you more. And he's like, well, what have you done with what I've showed you at the lower level? Like, you want to go deeper with me? What have you done with the shallow revelation? What did you do with the revelation I just showed you yesterday? And you want new revelation. And so I feel like when it comes to building your self-esteem, you got to understand this is being confident means that you have competence. Competence means you have an awareness and an accurate knowledge of where you are right now.
Yep.
Unless you can accurately assess where you are right now, you may strive for something that you're not competent in, and that's why you don't have the self-esteem that you need to get to where you need to go. You have to be confident at every level of where you are right now and be confident enough to know I'm not there yet, but I guarantee you I'm going to get there.
Work in.
Because and you said some, Cam, and I think there are those of us where I have been gifted from the young age over most people to be able to speak and use words.
Yeah.
I did it when I was little, trying to hustle kids out of dollars for at recess, you know what I'm saying? Hustle my way out of a spanking. Like, my mom used to tell me stories and my dad used to tell me stories. When I would get in trouble, I'd be like, yo, Dad, okay, let's really think about this, okay?
Right.
You said it was me, but Tim and Tony walked through the door at this time. If I said I was in there at this time, come on, Dad, do you really think I could do that? My dad be like, dang, that makes sense. So I'd walk out of a spanking, right? And then my mom be like, nah, Ron, did you hear what he just said? He said this, and this.
Right.
And they're like, oh, shoot, he hustled me, right? So I had a natural gifting to do something. Like, we all have a natural gifting. But like you said, did you take the time to work that thing? And sometimes we don't have self-esteem because we didn't do the work on self.
Yep.
Sometimes our good qualities manifest as bad qualities until we have the proper training and put the proper work in to hone them.
Okay. So here we are. We're coming towards the end of this podcast, right? We've talked about what low self-esteem is. We talked about what high self-esteem is. But how do we change our self-esteem, which is confidence, so that we can walk into that next phase? A young man, a young woman, a young lady, a young entrepreneur, somebody who's wanting to step up into a new phase of their life, breaking barriers and molds. They're saying, but show me how to get high self-esteem. How do I gain confidence in my life and where I need to go? What would you guys say are some stepping stones that they could use? And I'll weigh in, but to build self-esteem or build confidence in their life.
I think just working that thing, wherever that thing is, you have to work it.
Okay, wait. So what does that mean if somebody is trying to find a mate? They're trying to find it, and there's somebody who's so shy that they can't even talk to a girl, or so shy that they can't even talk to a guy.
So you know
What
what?
does
Like
that mean?
when I was younger, I didn't like speaking like in large groups. So I intentionally put myself in large groups to speak in rooms where I did not know people. You know, like I forced myself to speak about things I didn't know much on because it gave me exposure and to learn more. Like, you have to work that thing. So I don't really think it matters what it is. I think even if you feel like, well, I'm naturally talented in that, if you go into a room where you know people are working at it, you're not going to feel confident, because confidence doesn't come from God-given ability. Confidence comes from I've put the work in. So for me personally, I think whatever it is, you just have to work it. And I think if you can muster up the courage to put yourself in uncomfortable positions,
Oh, that's good.
that's life-changing at that point. Where it's like, whatever it is I naturally duck from, I'm going to intentionally put myself there until I'm comfortable, until my uncomfortability turns into being comfortable.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying one of the greatest ways to build confidence is confidence doesn't just come overnight, and it doesn't come by happenstance. You have to put yourself in a situation where you have to exercise confidence until you get confident in being in that space.
If you're not strong, put yourself under the weight.
Ooh, that's good.
Work the muscle. That's how you gain strength.
Oh, I like that. I like that. If you're not confident in going into a room, what you're saying is keep going into those
Keep
rooms.
going into those rooms until that feeling of being uncomfortable goes away.
Oh, wow. I like
Now you just got to work it.
So as Cam's talking, I'm trying to reverse engineer this in my brain. And as I reverse engineer, I'm getting confidence comes from competence. And competence comes from the work, which is a commitment. But in order to make that commitment, Cam, what do you have to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, even though you know you're not great at them yet? Got to have courage.
Yeah, the
Boy.
courage to go up there and do it.
Yeah. And the difference between courage and confidence is both action is confidence feels good and courage doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
And it's not going to feel good till you have the proof.
Yeah.
Once you have the proof,
Mhm.
you're competent in that thing.
Like you talked about that men conference, right? Tell us how you felt before you went on stage. The very first time you went in front of 1,000 people.
I was nervous as all get out.
Exactly.
And what does it take to still get up there?
That courage, right?
Courage.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
When your
that's
knees are
good.
shaking, you got the butterflies in your stomach, you're telling yourself, I shouldn't be here. I should fake an illness. I got to tell them I got sick real
Bro,
quick.
I still do it sometimes. I be
Yeah.
traveling to go
Like,
speak at places.
I got to tell
man.
them I had a family emergency. I can't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I was at a conference this summer sending you guys like, I'm about to fake an injury. I got to tell them I can't do
I
it.
seen that audience. I
Yeah,
got
like-
nervous when you sent the pic.
Because it's real. I don't care how many times you've been up there. I don't care. I mean, it's something you're going to naturally feel every single time. But then again, I think that feeling also lets you know how deeply you care about that thing. And you know you're in the right space when you feel that.
So you got to put yourself in a situation consistently to have to exercise whatever that is that you're afraid of or that you don't have confidence in. You got to put yourself in that situation continuously.
Yeah. Like I would be willing to bet with you that you probably still get nervous till this day before you get on stage, right?
Mhm.
But I bet you it's nothing like that very first time.
Absolutely not.
And you've probably been on stage thousands of times
Yeah.
since then, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna feel it every single time, but it's, I think, doing it despite what you feel
It changes the game.
is what changes.
Comfortable with being
And that's where the growth occurs, when you do it despite
How you feel.
feeling inferior.
And
I
when
don't
you-
belong here.
But in order for you to get into that room, it takes courage to put yourself in that room. It takes courage to go ask a girl out. It takes courage to ask a young man out if you have to, or reach out or make yourself, it takes courage to speak to your spouse and say, yo, I don't like when you do this.
It takes courage to go ask someone to coach you.
It's going to give you the
Yeah.
courage.
It takes courage, right? Like, you have something that I aspire to have one day.
Yeah.
That takes courage too.
And I think it requires you to put yourself in a situation to make a bold request.
Ooh.
And I tell all of my coaching clients, and my coach told me this, he says, what bold request can you make today that would help you shatter the heart belief or the ungodly belief that you've been telling yourself? What bold request can you make of yourself? What bold request could you make of a coach? What is the bold request you can make that could shatter that thing in your life? And I think that the greatest way for us, and I said it before, and I promise you, it is a game changer. One of the greatest ways to shift from having low self-esteem to no self-esteem is to do two things. Number one, I pray this every single day. And this was the prayer I prayed when I was digging through trash cans, when nobody wanted to hear me speak, when I was in government assistant lines, when I would speak to rooms of nobody being there or people would ridicule me. Here's the prayer I prayed. I prayed, God, teach me to see myself how you see me.
Ooh.
That's good.
Because until you can see yourself through the eyes of God, you will never have a proper image of who you are. The Bible says that we were created in his image and that we were formed by him. And so if God created us in his image, God didn't create no losers. He didn't create no suckers. He didn't create no people who were worthless. We were created in the image of God. So the first prayer is, God, show me how you see me. And one of the greatest ways we can do this is to look at the Bible. The Bible begins to tell us that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. The Bible tells us that we are more than conquerors. The Bible tells us that we're above and not under. The Bible tells us that we're the head and not the tail. The Bible tells us who we are. And he says, the person who reads the word of God and walks away from it and doesn't act on it is like a person who looks in the mirror, walks away and forgets who they look like or what they look like. When you read the Bible constantly shows you that you were created in the image of the greatest and most powerful being or whoever existed, right? We were created in the image of God. So that's number one. You got to ask God to show you and pray that you ask him to show you who you are through the eyes of how he sees you. But the second thing is the most powerful thing also for me is, I mentioned it before, is interrogating your current reality.
I love that.
When you have a negative belief about yourself, you need to put that belief on trial. And you need to run through that belief and ask yourself, is there any validity to the statement that was being said? You weak and you'll never amount to anything. Go ahead and look at your life and look at everything that you've been through.
Yeah.
And if you're still standing after doing all of the stuff that should have destroyed you and you still have hope, that statement was a lie.
Yep.
If they tell you that you will never amount to anything in your life, I want you to look at them and wait for them to ascend into heaven and sit on the throne of God.
Ain't gonna happen.
Ask yourself, did this person create you? Not from their DNA that God created.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, did they create your day? Did they tell you who you become? If their name is not God or their name is not Jesus Christ, they don't get to determine or tell you who you're going to be or not. So when are you going to take that moment to interrogate your current reality, put those beliefs, put those lies on the stand and make them validate themselves?
So it sounds to me like a lot of courage comes from being able to silence certain voices in your life, right? Who are you giving a position to at the table? Who are you giving a seat to at the table? Who are you allowing to continuously speak into your life and belittle what you have going on,
Bruh.
and you haven't approved that authorization, bro?
Well, sometimes our low self-esteem comes from a group of people with low self-esteem.
Ooh.
You can't
Misery-
have high
misery loves
self-esteem
company.
and rise above us.
You
We
can't.
need you down here
Misery
with
loves
us.
company.
What you mean? And so I feel like sometimes the low self-esteem, you got to be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. Part of the reason why you got low self-esteem is because you're hanging out with other people with low self-esteem, because comfort wants more comfort. You're going to feel comfortable around people who think low of themselves. And anytime you try to rise above that, people with lower self-esteem will tell you you're cocky, you're arrogant, you've done too much. But again, like we talked about, cockiness and arrogance means that you're better than everybody else. Being confident and having a healthy self-esteem says, no,
I just know I could do
I know
better.
I can do better.
I just know I could do better.
I love that. As we begin to talk about these principles, there's so many jewels that we dropped here. There's so many things that we've shared about low self-esteem, high self-esteem, what that means. Cam, you talked about putting yourself in the situation that makes you uncomfortable, that builds confidence. Dips, you talked about when you want to raise self-esteem, it takes courage to step into that room and place you where you are. And I talked about praying and asking God to see yourself how he sees you, and then interrogating those current realities. As we always do, I just want to chime in. Solomon, talk to the people and just share for a brief minute what you picked up when it comes to confidence, when it comes to what's a takeaway that you're picking up from this Bros to Men episode.
Well, it's funny because at the beginning of the year, I wrote down some of the things that were important to me, and a lot of it comes from confidence. And I think the one thing that we can't overlook is the power of comparison. And that goes directly into confidence, because we talk about, surrounding ourselves with people who also have low self-esteem, but that also goes with the media that we listen to as well. It's just as powerful. And so, when you are looking through Instagram and you're seeing people who have better bodies than you or better faces than you and all of this, and it doesn't really matter if they're pretending or not, that depending on the voice in your head, that triggers that self-esteem issue within yourself, and it reinforces it every time you do that.
Yeah.
And so I think part of that courage is courage to be able to resist those voices, and even if necessary, eliminate those things.
Good.
Very good.
And one of the things that I wrote, it was the sixth of my six resolutions for the year, is you already know what the destructive voice in your head will say, and it's nothing new. So don't give it any thought energy, simply dismiss it. Because that voice just is constantly repeating those things. You already know what it's going to say.
Hold on, Solomon.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, so it's already telling you these things, and it's constantly reinforcing it. You already know what it's going to say, so why give it that thought energy? And I think that's one thing that people can do, just to sort of try to eliminate that constant comparison either to yourself in the past or comparison to other people.
Hey, that's our producer, y'all.
Hey, dog. Every time we get to these moments, let me just get
again.
to him again.
Oh my God, bars.
What? All right, so listen, Dips, why don't you close this out, my man, on this episode, bro? Talk to the people, give them a thought before we close them in, and just close us out this episode, bro.
Listen, man, you got to have the courage to make a commitment to become competent, and then you'll have confidence. And Jeff told you how to get the courage.
Hey.
And that's not believe a lie, and the devil is a lie. And if you want to know the truth, God knew who you were even before your parents knew who you were. And if you want to know the truth, get in your Bible, because that Bible has all the suggestions you need to know the truth so that you get to a place where you could take the courage and make that step and rise.
Come on,
and
there it
sing
is.
And achieve what you need to achieve.
Hey, loaded.
Sad.
Well, listen, y'all, that's our episode.
Close the
right
curtain
there.
on that one.
Dip. He just shut it down. Listen, we appreciate you guys as always. Make a comment. Let us know how you think or what you think. Share with something that you had. Share a declaration that you want to make when it comes to your confidence, and make sure you're following us on all of our social. The Bros 2 Men Show, the number 2, and man, check in with us. We can't wait to see you guys next episode. Until then, love y'all.
Peace.